guess who's back? Alan Walker is back.
Again.
Yes, nonces are back. In fact, you
Tell
could say...
a friend.
Yes, tell all of your friends. Tell the entire neighborhood.
Give this video a share.
But yes, for those of you who aren't aware, you might want to check out one of our previous podcasts that I did with John talking about pedo pride being denied when Alan Walker, who is a sexologist, I think, some doctor with a PhD, was coming across with Nonce Advocacy in a university in Virginia, was placed on administrative leave because the university got some backlash from having a professor there who was going like, well, actually, we need to consider the feelings of the pedophiles. Yep. And then was eventually fired. Before I go any further, just because it's very, very relevant to this, check out this premium podcast I did with Carl a while back talking about scientific nonce advocacy, because yes, it is a thing that exists. It's something that we're going to be covering today, and Carl did a very good job of going into depth on what's going on with the various mainstream attempts to try and normalize pedophilia, or minor attracted persons, as the term is becoming to be known. So let's just carry on now. So first of all, the thing that made Alan Walker quite notorious in the first place and brought a lot of negative attention to the organization that was interviewing them, I think...
No, we're not respecting the pronouns.
No. Interviewing her because she's trans, but I think female to male, but still goes under gender-neutral pronouns. So she was interviewed by Prostasia, a child protection service slash advocacy organization. They're an NGO that say that they like to protect children. They don't. They don't really, not in any actual practical way. In fact,
protect them for who?
I have evidence that they are doing the opposite of protecting children. But let's go on. So they spoke to Alan, who had a book out called The Long Dark Shadow: Minor Attracted People and Their Pursuit of Dignity. Nonces and Their Pursuit of Dignity. Yes, this is a real thing.
Long Dark Shadow. I mean, do you want to sound like a supervillain? Because, I mean, that's what you are. And then you called yourself a term that would go with that, so...
But the description here is, it's one of the first scholarly studies of minor attracted people who do not offend, and judging by the research of in the book that I was able to actually find online, who said they do not offend, no verification beyond that. Oh, they told me that they didn't offend, therefore I can take their word as sacrosanct. I talked to Alan about their research, the stigma attached to this population, and what they learned about strategies to prevent offending. They're not preventing offending. They're just trying to destigmatize this overall. So, like, I've got it written down all in my notes here. So I understand what it is that they're going for, but we shouldn't be destigmatizing nonces and treating them with dignity. We should be making sure that it is the absolute most stigmatized behavior that you could ever partake in.
It's also just, again, revealing endlessly, in which they're like, yes, we must normalize this, normalize that. And I was like, how far are you going with this? We must normalize nonce. Nope. No, definitely not.
Don't really want to do that. But also, the slippery slope is real. If you're trying to destigmatize them and make them someone that you can just like, oh, invite the nonce to your barbecue. Invite them to your children's birthday party. They can read stories. No, I don't think I will. So I don't want to play any clips. I've got one clip later on, but in that video, Alan is consistently saying that prevention is needed on the MAP side, on the nonce side, saying that purely focusing on stranger danger from children doesn't help, even though, you know, teaching kids to be aware of strangers and stranger danger and all that sort of stuff probably does help, but they don't state at any point what exactly they think will be good prevention on the adult side, other than therapy, speaking to families, and limiting contact with children. You know, okay, fair play. This is all obvious, but then also saying we should create MAP support groups where all of the nonces can get together and exchange tips. I mean, you know, support one another. I just don't see it going well.
Chris Williamson's talked about this. I mentioned him when we were out to lunch.
Yes, yeah.
He sat down and did an interview with a guy who made a documentary. He wasn't involved, of course. He was just making the documentary. Well, he went to Germany, and in Germany, this is legal and allowed. So all the nonces get together and they have like cope groups where they're trying to convince each other not to engage in it. And he was making a documentary about this group and the fact that it was a thing. And one of the most messed up aspects was that there was a man and a woman who met each other in that group and bonded over their sickness. And then we're actually thinking, you know, we want to start a family and have kids. No. Big no. Like
No, you don't sterilize yourselves and then stay away from children. Lock yourself in a room for the rest of your lives and stay away from children. Stay away from society. Just get out. Just get out. That's how I feel about this. I must say there is some statements online saying that Walker has advocated for high quality child porn and realistic life-size dolls to be given to pedophiles as a way to affirm them and prevent them from doing bad stuff to actual children. I don't know if that's true, though, primarily because I can't find any statements in interviews where she said that, but it might be in the book because I wasn't able to get a copy of the whole book, and goddamn, I'm not buying that thing. I'm not buying that thing. It wouldn't surprise me if it's something hidden within the book, like later on towards the back chapters, but I can't verify it. So take that with a pinch of salt. But there is a previous paper that I was able to find called Minor Attraction, a Queer Criminological Issue by Alan Walker. Very interesting how it all gets wrapped up in queer, isn't it? Where she states that there exists evidence that minor attraction is a sexual orientation and the parallels between the treatment of MAPS and LGBT populations are striking. So what they've basically done is notice that, hey, this kind of rhetoric worked for gay rights. Why not use them for pedo rights as well? So that's what it's doing.
The gays can consent.
Yes, whereas children cannot. But they've also got the FAQ on here, and they state that they are sex positive, Prostasia are, and that's sex positivity means that every human being has the right to express and enjoy their own sexuality, provided they do so consensually. Sex positivity underpins our opposition to child sexual abuse, since it is a constant violation. By definition, children can't consent to sex with adults. I'm glad that they make that clear at least. But they say this contrasts with other organisations whose work is underpinned by society's moral standards, which can be mutable and subjective.
Whereas us, we don't have any standards or morals.
Yes, so this is basically, I appreciate that they're trying to go with a principled stance, but I don't trust you. And that's based on my own subjective moral opinion. Because I think there is reasons that a lot of people have this subjective moral opinion, and it's right to keep it so. You also have a sex offender running the organisation, Guy Hamilton Smith, who has a big Reddit post self-reporting about how he is a nonce and got added to the sex offender registry when he got caught. So that's a good start. And they have what's referred to as a MAP support club, where everybody can get together and talk.
Why do we do these segments?
Do you know what the age limit is for that?
Better be 18.
13 and older. 13 and older. So nonces can get together in the support group and openly get into contact anonymously with 13-year-olds who are worried that, I might be attracted to kids as well. And it's like, oh, great. So you're going to open up a forum where kids can get groomed.
What could possibly go wrong?
Fantastic.
I mean, we joked about brass eye all throughout, but it's literally this is the one thing we didn't want to happen.
Yep, I know. But this whole organisation, to me, seems like a bunch of perverts getting together and finding ways that they can legitimise their degeneracy and their noncery. And the whole thing, especially throwing aside the subjective standards, appears to me like this. I had you mock up this meme earlier. Being a paedophile is bad, actually. Source? That's the whole thing. Where's the empirical evidence? Well, if you can't conclusively,
it's hidden in this hammer.
Yeah. If you can't conclusively prove with science that being a nonce is bad, then I can't take that as true. That's the whole approach to this whole thing. But I also found some interesting stuff. If they want sources, I've got sources because the link should be in the document right under the meme there, John, because I found a website that's talking about why you should be concerned about Prostasia, as if it wasn't evident on the face of it, but they actually have some good statistics in here. So here's some through the entire website, as well as one article titled "The Intersection of Civil Rights and Child Protection" by Guy Hamilton Smith. They state the following statistic: 95% of all sex crimes reported to law enforcement are committed by first-time offenders. As if that makes it any better. This is only the first time they've done it, guys. Don't judge them too harshly. Who hasn't had a lapse in judgment and, nonced someone? I think most people. But carrying on, therefore, they believe that tax dollars spent on the sex offender registry not only violate individuals' rights, but that money could be better spent on prevention. So they're trying to go with the libertarian argument here. This is violating my independent rights. I had major doubts about his claims, considering that he himself is listed on the sex offender registry, but I decided to research the topic. They found an interesting article in a study by these people involving 4,295 child molesters. The rate of recidivism, which is them going back and committing the crimes again, was 5% after 3 years of release. So sounds like most of these first-time offenders don't go back, right? Oh, but that number climbs fast and climbs dramatically. In 5 years, that number climbs to 23%. In 10 years, that number climbs to 28%. In 15 years, that number climbs to 35%. The longest study ever conducted found that after 25 years, the recidivism rate was 52%. So it sounds like it wasn't just an accident that these people just happened to nonce kids. It sounds almost like it's a degeneracy in their brain that's compelling them to do this stuff, and we should remove them from society. This isn't like difficult. This is all pretty simple stuff. In the article, they continue, 3 simple steps that can reduce child sexual abuse by Megan Ingerman. She promotes the idea that children need comprehensive sexual education. This is all to protect them from being nonced, by the way. That includes pleasure, consent, chronophilias, fetishes, etc. Which really puts a whole new spin on the whole, like we need sexual education from the age of 5 up that's all about pleasure and consent and all this sort of stuff. Chronophilia, they point out, was a term coined by the sexologist John Money, who did some pretty awful experiments, which I've spoken about a number of times, so I don't want to have to describe them again. But it was a term coined by him to describe individual experiences of sexual attraction limited to individuals of particular age ranges. So it's just a fancy way of saying you're a nonce. Under the comprehensive sex education header, Megan writes, possibly the most obvious public health approach to preventing sexual harms is comprehensive intersectional sex education that includes a curriculum on consent, bodily autonomy, pleasure, chronophilias, fetishes, as well as supporting sexual and cultural identity. So all of those kids in Florida and Californian schools being taught by their teachers about fetishes, this is for their own benefit, to make sure that they understand when they're about to be nonced.
We're just teaching them that gay people exist, bro.
Yeah, we're just teaching them gay people exist.
No.
But
get that word out your mouth.
Also, intersectional, all of the links to LGBT, queer as a political group, it's all connected, isn't it? And they constantly complain. This is why when you go like, please stop teaching my 5-year-old about sex, they go, don't you understand how this harms queer people? Because it is all connected. Because at the end of the day, being a political umbrella, they're more than happy to accept paedophiles into that. They just need to get society into the state where the rest of us
this being the
are happy
difference
to
between the
accept it.
alphabet that goes on forever and can be additioned with anything, and the other people who
Well,
are not
because
part of the
don't you
alphabet.
understand her whole book? I read through a section that's available online. It's literally just, won't somebody think of the poor paedophiles? Don't you understand that society teaches them to hate themselves, and paedophiles might end up hating other paedophiles?
Yes.
Oh, the humanity of it all.
Good. We can organise them. Get all the pedos into a league.
This person, who's definitely not pro-nonce and just cares about children, has been announced by the Johns Hopkins University as having been hired for their child sex abuse centre. We are excited to share that Alan Walker, PhD, will be joining the Moore Centre as a postdoctoral fellow on May 25th. The Moore Centre for Prevention of Child Sexual Abuse. Interestingly enough, the Johns Hopkins University is where John Money operated and committed his crimes. I think committing his crimes is probably the best way to describe what he did. What he did was not scientific research. It was abuse on a massive scale. And John Hopkins, after the inevitable backlash, started to cope about this. Like, no. Alan's a leader in the field of perpetration prevention research. It's essential that we have Alan. We're delighted to have Alan, because otherwise, how are we able to protect children? If we don't have pro-nonces on the team, how do we protect children?
To stop the nonces, they're going to become nonces.
And we got a big self-report from queer criminologists who were applauding Hopkins' bravery in hiring Alan in the next link along. Congratulations to the DQC, I assume that's D something or other, queer criminology member, Alan Walker on this new position. It's all connected. It's all connected. Queer criminologists, pro-nonces. You can start to just sub out a lot of these terminologies that you find a lot in the progressive left for pro-nonce. That's generally speaking what I would do. And we've got people in the trans lobby coming out in full support as well. This one's brilliant. Gandalf the Gay says in response to someone, "You are correct. People look at like what he said and are like, see, he thinks that kids should be able to have sex when he never said that. Granted, none of these people have ever read what he's actually said or written just what Nazis have read about what he's said or written. So it's even more so than like want to protect kids, you must be a right winger. Want to protect kids, you must be a Nazi." I didn't realise that was what the Hitler Youth was all about.
Stone Toss is just like, well, okay.
Alrighty then. Yeah, so once again, more straw men thrown out. We've also got the stunning and brave position of nonces of people too. Once again, people not realising that this is the actual position that Alan is putting forwards, but minor attracted people who make up a portion of, but not all child abusers, we need to draw that distinction there, exist as people in their own right. Therefore, we must accept them.
Do they have rights?
Therefore, we must, what, just let them just go about their day? Just don't worry about the nonces. Just trust the nonce to their own judgment to not touch your children. No, I don't think I will. And then there's one of my favourite ones here, which is to prevent child sexual abuse, you first need to understand it. To understand it, you need to understand the people who commit it. Alan Walker is knowledgeable on the subject. See, to understand the nonce, you need to think like the nonce. And in thinking like the nonce, you need to act like the nonce. It's
the state of academia.
Yes, this is the state of academia. And it's antibodies against kookery. These people say that they're not the kooks. I know. And just to make sure that I'm not strawmanning this person, I did get a clip that Andy No shared where you can hear her say it in her own words. So let's just play a bit of this, their position on noncery.
Much for that question. I use the term minor attracted person or MAP in the title and throughout the book for multiple reasons. First of all, because I think it's important to use terminology for groups that members of that group want others to use for them. And MAP advocacy groups like Before You Act have advocated for use of the term MAP. They've advocated for it primarily because it's less stigmatizing than other terms like pedophile. A lot of people, when they hear the term pedophile, they automatically assume that it means a sex offender. And that isn't true, and it leads to a lot of misconceptions about attractions toward minors. I've definitely heard the idea that you brought up, though, that the use of the term minor attracted person suggests that it's okay to be attracted to children. But using a term that communicates who someone is attracted to doesn't indicate anything about the morality of that attraction.
I think there's morality inbuilt into it, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. I mean, the idea is that
bad.
The paedophile and the other version, there's a different... No, there isn't. No, there really isn't.
No, there really isn't. As far as I'm concerned, I think they refer them to as a no-map, a non-offending minor attracted person. One that inherently admits that, yes, if you're minor attracted, you're more likely to offend. Two, to me, that's just nonce in waiting. Is all you've said there.
With extra steps.
Yeah, you've said paedophile with extra steps. And there was an interview as well with the rest of the Prostasia, because I didn't want to get the whole clips up, but they've just done a transcript of the interview. And I thought I'd read out a bit of the highlights that I found here. So they continue on this weird distinction between offending and non-offending maps, as if they aren't one in the same. Or, well, they aren't one leading into the other, basically. Child sexual abusers are people who have committed a sexual offence against a child. Many of these people are indeed MAPs. Good to get that admission. But first of all, there are many people who commit sexual offences against a minor who are not attracted to children in general. We know that abusers commonly commit sexual offences for reasons related to power, control, and access, but not because of attraction. So many child sexual abusers are not MAPs. So if it's nothing to do with sex, why would these people be sexually abusing them? That's just complete rubbish. There's obviously a sexual dimension to them because children can, sad as it is to say, children can be abused without being sexually abused. So obviously there is a paedophilic element to their behavior, making them paedophiles. Okay, so, but good attempt to try and separate the two categories. She carries on. My research study ended up including interviews with 42 minor attracted people, and in those interviews, I asked participants about their experiences with coming to terms with their identity and coping with the stigma they faced, as well as about how they've strategized to not commit offenses. Once again, all of this is self-reporting. So they come up to you and say, I'm a map, but I swear I've never acted on it, never once. But also, I feel really bad about how society makes me feel about myself. Can you write a book about me, please? My purpose in asking about their strategies for non-offending are pretty obvious, as I'm interested in offence prevention, and I figured MAP's personal strategies would have relevance to other MAPs who might be struggling with some kind of temptation to act on their attractions. So, trust the MAP, trust the nonce to tell other nonces how to not nonce. No. No, I won't. Although I'm not a map myself, well, so you say, I am queer, and so I too have been through experiences and realised that I have attractions many people wouldn't understand, and that some people find to be immoral. And those experiences have really shaped who I've become. And so I sort of empathise with those experiences, and I wanted to learn more. So once again, diminishing the legitimacy of gay people who aren't part of the alphabet lobby by saying that you have the exact same experiences as nonces.
The moral to relativism there, though.
I
It's
know.
just like, well, some people find what I do immoral, therefore this is just as legitimate as I find myself legitimate. No, it's not.
No, it's
Obviously
it's
bloody
nothing to do with one another, to be perfectly honest. What we need is an option to get those maps who want it into some kind of affirming therapy. How do you affirm, because with trans therapy, trans affirming therapy is you just give them what they want.
Yeah, that's right, you are a woman, and we keep going until you're... No. that doesn't-
Yeah. So what would the affirming therapy for a nonce be? I dare not even guess. But I just thought I'd end up with the reaction that she's got from other professors, which I think was quite funny. She carries on. So I remember a professor of mine asking about my research, and when I said I was studying people who are attracted to children who don't commit offences, he said, oh, okay, sex offenders. And I clarify, no, they have attraction to minors, but they haven't committed an act of sexual abuse. And he said, right, sex offenders. Based. And I also had another professor who, when I brought up my research interest, she just said yuck and moved along. Based.
I feel like people were giving you a message.
Yeah, people were saying, this is not the best path to go down. And honestly, no matter what potentially good intentions this person may or may not have, if you were to go full good faith and give them the benefit of the doubt, if they do have good intentions, they are remarkably naive in their approach to just going, oh, you've never nonced anyone? Oh, okay, I completely believe you. You're definitely the best person to go to for preventative measures. And also, there is a massive element here of just trying to normalize it, which is not good for anyone, not good for society, not good for anybody, and certainly not good for children.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as the Epoch series, this one between Bo and Thomas on the history of Formula One. And if you want to follow Thomas, you can follow him on Getter at Thomas W. Dowling on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.